When we left home 17 days ago... Reggie, this one's not about you, buddy. Let's try that again. When we left home 17 days ago, it was 7 degrees centigrade and raining, exactly as you'd expect of London in mid-autumn. Then to arrive in the 34-degree tropical heat of Singapore was a shock to say the least, and one that we still hadn't fully adjusted to 10 days later when we flew to Thailand. Today it was cloudy, but still 32 degrees as we took a long-tail boat back to the main part of Phi Phi Island. And so it probably wasn't the best idea to climb to the top of the island, given the late afternoon heat. I'm so hot right now. How are you getting on?
Yeah, sweet.
You see, Phi Phi is unique in the sense that it's very nearly two separate islands. All that joins the two is this thin strip of land where the main town is located. At its narrowest, it's only 160 metres wide. And whilst you can acknowledge this from the ground, you can actually see it if you climb high enough. And so here we were, braving the heat and being eaten alive by mosquitoes. That's the sound of a greater racket-tailed drongo, possibly the coolest named bird to ever exist. And when we reached the top, the view was just as incredible as we'd been promised. But as we sat there, feet dangling, admiring the view, we realised that we were surrounded by all these glamorous and sweat-free people who looked as though they hadn't just zigzagged up a dirt track through the jungle to get there. Well, that's because they hadn't. It turns out there was a much more direct route up from the town, one that took the form of concrete paths and steps. Needless to say, that was the route we took back down. The next morning we were up at the crack of dawn. Today we were heading out on a snorkelling adventure to the waters surrounding Phi Phi Leh, an uninhabited island about 2 or 3 miles south of the main island. As someone with a reasonable fear of deep, dark water, I was a little anxious about how it would go. I had no idea how deep the water would be when we entered, or how I'd react if it was so deep I couldn't see the bottom. But before I could overthink things any further, we'd arrived and it was time to take the plunge. And yeah, it was uncomfortably deep, and at the bottom I could make out these old fishing crates, which made it all the more unsettling. But it wasn't long until we made our way to the shallows, and I never thought that I'd actually find comfort in the presence of sharks. That's not nearly as terrifying as it sounds. These were black-tipped reef sharks, and to humans at least, they're more or less harmless. It's difficult to get a sense of scale from this footage, but they were about 2 feet long and only a couple of weeks old, using the safety of the island as a sort of nursery until they were big enough for the open ocean. Even still, it felt acutely bizarre to be sharing the water with them. Now before we go any further, I really must apologise for the quality of this footage. It turns out I'm not very good at both swimming and filming at the same time. Most of what I captured is either unusably shaky or just pointing at the wrong thing altogether. So instead, I need to borrow your imagination for a minute. I want you to pretend that this is a fish tank. So first up, we saw literally hundreds of Sergeant Majors, these colourful fish that seem to be everywhere around Phi Phi. These were followed by quite a few needlefish, a strange type of fish with a slender and alien-like body. I've already mentioned the black-tipped reef sharks, but just seeing a shark in person and occupying the same water as one was surreal and awe-inspiring. Next we saw a pair of Moorish idols, followed by a rainbow parrotfish who looked like the character from one of my favourite childhood books, The Rainbow Fish. And then to top it all off, we saw what was undoubtedly the highlight of the trip, a hawksbill turtle. As we've already established, I'm a terrible underwater cameraman, but luckily the instructor offered to dive down with my GoPro to film him up close as we watched from above. These turtles are fairly small and have a serrated carapace, which along with their dark and mottled colouring, can make them exceptionally difficult to spot against the ocean floor. After 3 or 4 hours in the water, we headed back exhausted but delighted with our good fortune. We left Phi Phi Island a couple of days later, taking our seats for the 90-minute ferry ride ahead. And once we were about halfway, the sky all of a sudden turned a deathly charcoal and the rain began instantly and with full force. The passengers sat on the outer decks crowded inside to escape the downpour. And then as we disembarked the ferry back in Krabi, it looked as though the world was about to end, with a sky straight out of an apocalypse movie. The rain was so heavy that it actually hurt, and I felt bad for those caught walking or on motorbikes, as we took a minibus to where we were spending the next few nights in Krabi town itself. We hurried into our hotel and waited out the rain. It wasn't until the evening that it finally stopped. By now we were tired of being stuck indoors, and so made our way over to Ao Nang Beach to watch the Loi Krathong celebrations. Loi Krathong is an annual Thai festival celebrated during November's full moon that literally translates as to float a basket. Baskets made from banana leaves and decorated with flowers and candles are floated in rivers or out to sea as a way to pay respect to the goddess of water and for people to float away their hatred and sorrow. Baskets are sold all along the beachfront and adjacent streets, with locals and tourists both participating in the event. It was the perfect way to end what had been a wonderful few days.